Hi everyone, I'm Suzanne Clements, one of the pastors at Trinity United Methodist Church in Lafayette, Indiana, and I'm so happy to have the opportunity to share this weekend's message with all of you. Some of you at Trinity know that I attended our Indiana United Methodist Annual Conference this past week with several of the Trinity folks. This year, our conference was held at Ball State University, and although spending a few days together with others in a conference at a big meeting may not sound like the most inspirational occasion, but in so many ways it really is. Every year when I'm there, there's always at least one story, and sometimes more than one, that really touches my heart, that inspires me. And this year was no exception. And so I was blessed to hear some stories this week. If you're like me, there is nothing quite so compelling as a passionate, personal story. And so I have one to share with you that I was blessed by at annual conference this week. Now, if you were with us here at Trinity this past winter, you might remember that in February we collected an offering, a missions offering, for a United Methodist Recovery Ministry in Indianapolis that is called the Lucille Raines Residence. And this is a multi-story residence that houses and supports about 50 individuals in recovery from substance use disorder. And for one of our meals during our conference week at Ball State this week, I attended a special lunch that was hosted by the Lucille Raines residents. And I had the privilege of hearing one of the former residents there share her story. Erin is the young woman's name, and she did give me permission to share her story with you all here at Trinity. Erin is a small-statured woman in her early 40s. She's about my height, so she's pretty short. She has shoulder-length brown hair, and she has an energetic, but not, I'd say, overly bubbly personality. And she loves to talk about Lucille Raines. And Erin is also just this really genuine, straight talker. And she didn't hold back in telling us about how hard her life had been until she committed to recovery and began living at Lucille Raines. She told us that she was raised by her grandmother because her own parents early in her life were not able to raise her. She told us that she began using meth at age 13 and that she started shooting heroin not long after that. When she was 15 years old, her grandmother basically walked out on her, and she began living with an abusive older man who dealt drugs. She ended up having children with this person. She told us that drugs both dulled her pain and provided kind of the only momentary occasions where she sensed she had a place of release from her pain and her trauma. And then a little bit later in her life, she married someone else, a man who also suffered from a substance use disorder. And this man ended up committing suicide, which caused even a deeper trauma in Erin's life. And she told us that she was addicted for 20 years. And through this time, she ended up losing her children. She spent time in prison. She also told us that she overdosed so many times that at this point she doesn't even remember how many times this happened. And that even now she still owes about $15,000 for countless ER visits that required the use of Narcan to save her life. Well, coming up to the present time in her life, after being released from prison and staying in a different recovery house, she moved into the Lucille Raines residence, and she really credits that to helping her maintain what is now 5 years of sobriety. And she told us that at Raines, she, for the first time in her life, really felt seen and supported and understood. She said there she was surrounded by a community of people who truly cared about her and wanted her to succeed. And she told us that every single day that she lived there at Rains, there was someone at the front desk or somewhere that to say hello to her and greet her and wish a blessing on her day. She said that the staff were always there to listen with empathy and to offer encouragement. And she said during her time living there, she began for the first time in her life to see herself differently. She said she became able to see herself as a person with value, as someone who had something to offer the world, as someone who was worthy of love and investment. Because as she explained to us, she had not grown up with that understanding, right? One of the key things that had been missing her life was a sense of worthiness. She said her whole life had been full of shame, and she'd never felt like that she was worth anyone's care or attention, that she was capable of doing anything good. But at Rains, people looked at her with love. And they even told her that they admired her. And this just made all the difference. And as she talked with us, you could see that Erin spoke with a deep sense of confidence and joy that was really deep inside her. And with tears in her eyes, she, as she was talking with us, she looked over at the director of the residence, who was there in attendance, and gushed about how much love that she had for this woman and how amazing it still is for her to hear that this woman, whose name is Carolyn, admires her. As she put it, the two of them now have a mutual admiration society. And she laughed when she said this. And it was obvious the effect that this relationship has had on Erin. And with great pride, as she wrapped up her story, Erin told us that she is entering college this fall to pursue a nursing degree. And her goal is to be an ER nurse so that she can provide non-judgmental affirmative emergency care for others who land in emergency rooms when experiencing an overdose. She is now a healed woman, and she's answering her call to go where others need the compassion and hope that she can give. And Erin acknowledged, she was straight up, she said that this is going to be hard and it's going to be a long journey to get her nursing degree. And that years ago, she could never have envisioned this journey for herself. But she has this deep and inspiring hope. And as I witnessed her share her story, I have no doubt that she's going to fulfill this calling, because I could see the joy and hope practically brimming over in her spirit. And I wish you all could have been there to hear her remarkable story. She is a woman, Erin is a woman who has been changed from the inside out, and she is ready to go. Our scripture texts, both of our passages for today, we have an Old Testament passage from Genesis and a New Testament a gospel text from the book of Matthew, as well as our passage from last week that I preached on. They all contain the message that as God's followers, we are on a journey. We are expected to listen to God and to go. The very earliest followers of our triune God, Abram and Sarai, they're told, God tells them, he gives them the sense that they're to leave everything about their current life. And basically God tells them, just leave everything behind, your people, your home, and you're to go to this brand new place where I will bless you. And what's particularly striking about this story, about the people who become Abraham and Sarah, are that they're promised new life when their lives would seem to be nearing the end. They're old. They've not been able to have any children. So they're on this cusp of the last season of life. And yet God comes to them to do something new, to give them life. I mean, who in the world would imagine that these two, right, would be able to have a child and bring new life into the world? But that is exactly what happens. And in all of this, there's a part of them that is like, really? Wow. But they trust that through God all things are possible. They're open to God's mercy, and they follow. They listen and they go. They turn in the direction of new life, and God blesses them and all generations through them. Well, I don't know about you all, but I usually don't find turning into a new, unexpected, and unfamiliar direction easy. I don't find that easy. I think that it's hard to leave what we know, even if what we know and are accustomed to is holding us back, or maybe even causing us pain, because it can feel even scarier to step into what is unknown. We tend to prefer the familiar to the unfamiliar. Because I think holding on to the familiar, even if it's not life-giving for us, it gives us an illusion of control, right? We would too often rather stay where we are, even if we're stuck in a present situation, rather than move into a new, unknown reality. But as I consider Aaron's story, which really is one of moving from an entrenched and painful stuckness, right, to hope and new life, there are two aspects of her story that I would like to highlight for us. One is that Aaron shifted from being isolated, alone, and untrusting of others to finding others whom she could trust and who would support her and encourage her. She realized in her recovery that she had never had any meaningful connections in her life. And she came to understand that connection was essential for her journey. She needed relationships with other sober, authentic people. She says that she needed community. And as she began to trust the compassionate community around her at Lucille Raines, they showed her mercy. They looked at her through eyes of love, regardless of her past and her mistakes. They saw her through God's eyes. They saw her potential, her spunky spirit, her determination, and they helped her claim her worth as a beloved child of God, and helped her begin to imagine how she could grow and thrive and begin a new journey that would equip her to use her wisdom, experience, and compassion to be present to others with mercy and hope. And what enabled Aaron to move out of that stuck and addicted place of darkness was the experience of mercy, which helped her to see and trust in her own goodness. And it rooted her in the ground of being, which is love. Because when our ultimate trust is in our good and loving God, when we can trust that good presence within us, we can then move in new and unfamiliar directions. In our gospel reading for today, Jesus is out moving and healing among the people, as he was usually doing. And he chooses to stop and spend time with a tax collector named Matthew, which is a big problem from the religious leaders who are around him and watching him. Because you see, in Jesus' time, people like Matthew, who worked for the Roman Empire collecting unjust taxes, they were some of the people who were considered the most immoral and the most shameful in their community. They were really reviled by most of their community. So here's Jesus, right, risking his reputation and his standing in the community by associating with Matthew. But here he is, extending mercy to Matthew, inviting him into a new way of life. Here Jesus is, reaching out and inviting the one that everyone else eyes with suspicion, if not downright judgment. And what does Jesus say to those who are criticizing him? He tells them, healthy people don't need a doctor. It's the people who are sick who need a doctor. So basically he's saying, I haven't come for those of you who think that you've already got it all together and can stand on your own security. I have come for those who need the peace and compassion that I have to offer. And the thing about it is that none of us, right, can stand on our own security or morality or wisdom or giftedness. We are, every one of us, in need of God's mercy and grace. And often it seems that it's those of us who are most vividly touched by that grace of mercy, right? When that mercy comes to us and when we're so deeply in need of it, our eyes are opened. And these are the folks who are most ready to say yes and to go sometimes in those new life-giving directions that we would not otherwise be charting on our own. I think folks who have experienced that, they know in here that mercy is at the heart of it all. And then this gives this sense of hope, and there's a gratitude, right, that really grounds someone. And it's this clear and deep acknowledgement of mercy that I heard in Aaron's story that really just spoke to me. And also what I heard was the role of our church through the mission of Lucille Rains that walked alongside Aaron to help her see herself through eyes of mercy and to then blossom into this beautiful, transformed, empowered woman of God. In the beginning of human history, our Creator invited, right? He spoke out and said, "Leave the limited way of life that you know for the new reality that I am going to give you." And Jesus encountered the one most in need of mercy and said, "Come and follow me to somewhere new, to a place where mercy takes precedence over everything else." And my friends, the very same invitation extends to each of us through the Spirit who walks with us individually and who also walks with us together as Christ Church. Love invites us to leave our safe and familiar locations and create a field hospital where God's love and mercy is brought out to a wounded, hurting world, one connection and relationship at a time. And I think about our Trinity community, and I am filled with hope because I know our love for God and our heart for those in need of mercy in our community. So let's all be ready and let's go and serve together.